Hey folks, Ken Coleman here with you as we go through our 7-part series unpacking my best-selling book, From Paycheck to Purpose. In the book, we unveil 7 stages that will allow you to discover and do the work that you were created to do. Today, through our conversation, we're going to cover stage 6, which is get the dream job. My guest is multi-Grammy and Emmy award-winning music legend Harry Connick Jr. You're going to love this, a guy who truly is living the dream. So much good here. Here is my conversation with Harry Connick Jr. Well, Harry, I'm excited about our conversation and done a little bit research on your family. And I saw a picture on Instagram of you and your pop recently in the location that was the record store that your mom and dad owned. And as they were looking to pay their way through law school, and obviously your dad, a very well-known district attorney in New Orleans, how soon did music hit you? I mean, was just music going on in the home all the time? Obviously, they had a record store. Like, at what point do you go and your parents begin to realize he doesn't just like music, he's got some talent here?
Well, the record store was long before I was born, but they had a lot of records by the time I came around, and they loved music. Both my parents really have always loved music. My mother's side of the family was the one that was more musical. I had an uncle on her side that was, a super freak musician, and my mother, had great musicality. So she's the one who kind of recognized that, I kept going to the piano and playing and was really interested in it. And thankfully she recognized that and jumped on that and got me into positions where I could learn very quickly. And my father, was right there with her. So they provided opportunities for me, nothing, extraordinary in terms of, big giant piano or expensive piano teachers. They just got me musically educated and found opportunities for me to grow, which turned into unbelievable opportunities because growing up in New Orleans, I had access to amazing music, and I got a chance to study with some of the greatest instructors of all time. So it's been, my whole life, probably since I was 3 or 4 years old.
At what point do you realize, I think I want to give this a shot as a professional?
Oh, as long as I can remember. I mean, the first time I played in public was actually at the opening of my dad's campaign headquarters in 1973. I was 5 years old, and I really remember that day playing the national anthem and kind of looking up over the piano and seeing these folks. It was outside. I was on the back of a flatbed truck, and I could see people enjoying it, and it was a connection for me. I didn't really understand what was going on, but it seemed that when I play these little keys on this wooden box, people seemed to like that. And my personality type was such that I began to crave that type of attention. So, coupling that with going down to the French Quarter all the time to sit in, I developed a desire to be a performer, really, really early.
I love that you shared it that way, because I think sometimes people feel a little guilty if they've got that performer in them, but that's the seed of what really takes on a life of its own. How would you describe the benefit of performing now beyond the attention? Obviously it's great when people applaud, wow, Harry, that's great. But there's something else that you're giving the audience. And as an artist matures, or any performer matures, to begin to go, hey, I certainly love the attention, but I think it shifts from attention to something else. How would you describe that?
It's a great question. And I think my answer would be there's an internal struggle that goes on invariably every time I go on stage, which is the quest to be the best entertainer I can be, at the same time being the best musician I can be. And those don't always go hand in hand. In other words, if I am playing jazz music, which isn't the most popular music out there, sometimes it's a little bit inaccessible because maybe sometimes there's no singing, or the beat may be a little bit complex. It's difficult music sometimes. And And the performer in me wants to keep the audience engaged, and the musician in me wants to stretch as much as I can musically and go down these stream of consciousness rabbit holes. And that's a tough line to walk, because you can't forget that, if you you burst out in some piano solo, like on the 18th chorus, you may start to lose some people, and there's also a band full of musicians who's listening to me play every night too. So you want to, make sure you're impressed the people you're working with. So there's this kind of struggle that goes on. And I like that struggle. I like being able to, ebb and flow with the audience. If I feel like I'm losing them, then to be able to pull them back, not to patronize them or underestimate their musicality, but it's definitely something to think about.
I love that. I want to stay here, folks. I hope you heard what he said. I think you've described a tension there when you love the craft. We talk about, this all the time on the Ken Coleman Show. I define passion as work you love. It's not about notoriety. It's not even about pay. You just get lost in it. You think about it. You get the juice. You're in the middle of it. You understand that. And I think you just described a really healthy tension. That's where we should be, because if we're in that place where, boy, I love the craft, like I could get lost just jamming right here. But at the same time, I do the craft because I want to contribute something to those that are consuming it. That's a really healthy tension, isn't it?
I think so. And you probably just described it more eloquently than I did. I think it is very healthy. At least it is for me, because it's ever present. It doesn't seem to wane. It never gets too intense, but that's one thing that's constant, even through what I might call a musical evolution or musical progress. The one thing that remains constant is this constant awareness that people, if you think of the audience as other than a sea of faceless people and you think of them as individuals, well, one of those individuals might be a single mom working 2 jobs who happened to decide to spend her hard-earned dollars on a ticket to come see me. Or it may be your wife who surprised you, the show, or it could be somebody who was given a ticket who has no idea who I am and really would rather not be there. So if you think about that, or at least some of the time realize that these are a collection of individuals, all of whom are there, at least momentarily, to see something that you have to offer them, that's a sacred dedication that I have to make, that coincides with the dedication to the craft. So those are, to me, both of those things are work hand in hand.
Yeah, that's so good. I want to go back. So your parents obviously realize Harry's got some talent here. He actually enjoys this. And so they begin to get you opportunities, to play. And that's what I want people to hear. I want people to forget Harry Connick Jr. for a moment and go, this is a young kid named Harry, and his parents are supporting this. And then you had to actually develop and really learn. Talk about the early days of, okay, I know I want to get after this. Talk about developing the craft and having the patience to stick with it. And also, I'm curious to know, what's it like for a young kid to get in a room full of world-class musicians and stepping into maybe that intimidation or fear or whatever you experience? I'd love to hear your unique perspective on that.
Well, it's like any young person who sees someone doing, what they would like to do, and they make it look really, really easy. I remember seeing an instructional video of Steph Curry just working on fundamentals. That's great. And there's probably 1,000 million people who can do those fundamentals, but to do them consistently with the type of pressure that someone like he has to endure on a world stage every night is something completely different. And that's what I wanted to attain as a musician. I wanted to be consistently be able to hang with my musical heroes. And there are absolutely no shortcuts to that. And I know that from hearing it from the people who taught me, people like Ellis Marsalis and the countless classical piano teachers that I had, and the countless musicians that I worked with. I mean, when you see a guy like, Branford Marsalis, who's arguably, if not the greatest tenor saxophone player and soprano saxophone player on the planet, he's right there when you see a guy like that that still plays long tones, which is basically as long as you can hold the note and then you go to the next note, working on those kinds of fundamentals, you realize, you know, I have to go this route. And even though the progress is incremental, there is progress. And that's what I loved about it. I was never really intimidated as a kid because I was ignorant. I didn't understand what I was doing. It wasn't until I got to be, you know, like a teenager when my mind started to expand, where I realized how much I actually didn't know. And I was on stage with people who would, you know, just musically destroy me, you know, and this is hard music. You know, there's lots of music out there that I love to play that I wouldn't call difficult. But when you're growing up playing jazz music, it's difficult, or classical music. When you're on stage with 80 musicians, you know, all of whom are better than you because you're 12, you know, you feel intimidated. But I happen to like that. I remember going in the studio with George Jones, one of my favorite singers of all time. I was a grown man. This was, I don't know, I was around 40 or however old I was. And, you know, standing next to him in the studio, yeah, that's intimidating, you know. Or, I mean, I could go on and on about the list of people I've been on stage with that very intimidating.
Oh, sure. How do you process that? Because there are people that are watching this right now. They're going, hey, if I step into this, do this thing that my heart is beating for, but I'm scared that I'm not going to be very good. Well, you know what? That's just reality. You have to face that too. How do you overcome that in that moment?
Well, I tell my kids this all the time. Give yourself something to edit. For the people who are afraid to take the first step to write a book, paint a painting, or, you know, swing a golf club, you can't improve upon nothing. You have to write that first page or write that first song lyric or plunk out that first melody to give yourself something upon which to improve. And it's a terrifying feeling, venturing into something that you don't know anything about, that you're passionate about, but you see people on the internet that are infinitely greater than you. But the point is, nobody has your thumbprint. No one does. So your life experiences are going to lead you down a path that is uncharted. No matter how much better somebody might seem, they're not you. And I'm very confident in my individuality, and I'm confident in the idea of giving myself something upon which to improve. And those are skills in themselves that take a long time to develop. But at this point in my life, I feel confident about those things, which allows me to be uninhibited and game to take any kind of artistic risk.
I'm glad you mentioned your girls as a father and as a parent, because one of my favorite shows, our family's favorite shows, our poor kids have been indoctrinated. We love American Idol, and for years you were one of the judges. But one of the things that once we had babies and then they became toddlers a little older, and we would see those early rounds where these kids would come in and they would just embarrass themselves. And you could see it coming. You know, I'm great. I'm going to blow the judges away. And then they sound like somebody stepped on a goose's neck. And the judges say, look, and you don't have the talent. You can't do this. And then they just lose their mind and they walk out, flipping the camera off, cussing the whole 9 yards. And I remember, Harry, I would see those scenes. And as a dad, all of a sudden, it used to be funny. Then it was like, this is sad. I actually feel bad for this kid. And usually we would see a skulking parent in the shot too, right? And the parent was either one of two things they were doing in that moment. They were either, agreeing with the kid, those judges are idiots, or you could see them almost in shame. Because at some point that kid said, Mama, can I sing? And she said, baby, you're so good. And she knew she was lying to the kid. And I'm not trying to make this a sinister thing. However, for parents that are watching, we've got to be honest with our kids and honest with ourselves about does this kid have this talent? Is there some moldable clay here? And if they do, let's die to our dreams for the kid and let the kid go do something they're really gifted at. And the other side of it is let's have the courage to be honest with our kids and help them see the difference between something I maybe fantasize about versus something I can do. That's the long setup, but I'd love to hear your perspective on that.
Well, I think it's a combination of things. I think it's important to be honest, with ourselves and with our children. But I think it's also important to realize that you're dealing with a developing ego and a developing self-esteem, which, by one simple phrase like "you're not good enough," could, and I'm not a therapist, but I would imagine could be very difficult to process as a kid. I know it from experience. When my teacher Ellis Marsalis told me, "You are wasting your time in music. You should go find another vocation." That rocked my world. Now, what I didn't know was that was a statement that was tailored to me personally, because I was a misfit and I wasn't working up to his standard. I wasn't working up to standards. And so he told me that, but that was a motivational tool for him after a very intensive and long relationship. But I also think it's important for, you don't necessarily have to comment on it. If your kid comes up to you and says, "I want to be a singer," and maybe that they're not very good, at least that's your opinion. Well, the only way they're going to find out is by trying it. So it's okay to be rejected. I'm 53 years old. I get rejected all the time in my business. That's what it is. And those are important things. It's important to lose. It's important to be told no, not necessarily constantly by your parents. Like I'm not, there was a time, my oldest daughter wanted to be a fashion designer. She was never really going to be a fashion designer, but we went to the fabric stores and I spent the day with her buying swatches and little binders to put the swatch, and she drew. She did it for a couple of weeks, and was my response, "You're never going to be a fashion designer." No, my response was, "This looks like something so fun to explore." And I didn't need to tell her that she didn't have the talent to be a fashion designer, because she invariably found out that I don't think I'm good enough for this. So I think it's a very subtle balance of reality coming from different sources.
Yeah, I love that. It's really wise. I love the idea of let's let them try it and get some real feedback. I think
realistically, I mean, sometimes, buying fabric wasn't very expensive, but, maybe if she do horseback riding, like, wait a minute, it's pretty costly, or there are other things. I mean, this isn't what I do for a living, but this is my personal experience. It seems to have worked pretty well for us.
Yeah, absolutely. You talked about still experiencing rejection. I think people forget that. I think they see people that are well known and they forget that. And we all have to face it, certainly on our journey to doing what we were born to do. How do you handle rejection? What's become your mode of operation when that happens?
I try to accept things gracefully, and I'm sort of a fatalist in that I think things happen intentionally, and although you may not understand reasons at the time, you almost invariably over time you find that, oh, I see why that didn't happen. For every one product you see of mine out there, whether it's a film or a Broadway show or an album or a TV show, there were probably 10 that never made it for various reasons. It's hard to be told no, but if somebody's telling you no and as a personal insult, those things have no effect on me, and I try to pass that on to my kids too. We just don't have time for noise or ugliness or anything that's not, lovely. But professionally speaking, as disappointing as sometimes things can be, I think there's an art to pain, and I think there's an art to accepting things with grace. And certainly there are many things that we don't have any control over, that we just cannot change. And the sooner you learn to accept the fact that that was not meant to be, let me move on with my life, you dust myself off, and keep on going. That's sort of my policy.
Yeah. I'm so excited to ask you this, because I want people to hear from somebody who is living their dream. Certainly you have accomplished so many things, and yet you're 53 years young. I'm sure that dream is continuing to evolve. I'd love your perspective on what's it like when you get to the top of that mountain, if you will. And so I'm there, okay? And you certainly have gotten there. But then the vision expands. I'm just curious, at 53, how is the dream continuing to evolve and change?
I guess I'm so passionate about what I do that the only bothersome feeling I have is I'm going to run out of time. I just have so much that I want
Yes.
that I want to do. Not so much that I want, but just things that. Listen, I was very lucky early on. I was able to achieve some success, and along with that comes, you make some money, you become famous, and those are things that are nice things. But ultimately, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart, nothing in my life would have meaning were it not for my family and my faith. And it allows me. A very famous person asked me a question one time, like a really famous person. He said, "Do you ever cheat on your wife?" I said, "No." He said, "Why?" I said, "Because that is what allows me to be the best person that I can be." And this person thought just the opposite, like it holds you down. You can't do all the things you want to do. That's the antithesis of what I think. But if the important things in your life, the really important things, the little things are in order, if that foundation is in place, everything else is going to fall into place. Disappointment, success, dreams, whatever. So, I'm happy because of that.
I agree with you. I mean, if you have all this professional contribution in your personal life, you're not on purpose in your personal life. It just doesn't have the meaning. Doesn't have the same meaning. I love that.
Not for me. And I wouldn't be able to, you hear those struggling artist stories and, sad stories about musicians, who are addicted to drugs. And for me, it's much easier to create in the throes of joy than pain. You can create art in response to that pain, but when you're in the middle of it, it sure is to me, it's a distraction.
Yes.
I've had terrible tragedy in my life, and I can draw from that if I need to find something creatively in that direction. But man, I sure would rather have things in order. And that allows me to go crazy artistically. Yes. I can really have fun.
Yes, I love that. There's no distraction there. That's so good. It crushes the creative process, certainly can tamp it down. Okay, so the album is, of course, Alone with My Faith. I've never heard you talk much about your faith. I was really intrigued by this when I saw it, and I'm just curious, what's your faith journey? What is faith? What does that mean to you?
Well, I talk about it when I'm asked about it, and I've been asked about it, my whole career. People say, are you religious? I say, yes, I'm Catholic. And then some people want to know more. Some people don't care. It's not something I'm embarrassed of or ashamed to talk about. I love to talk about it whenever I'm asked about it. And in a nutshell, my dad is Catholic. My mother was Jewish. They fell in love, got married. My mother wanted myself and my sister to decide what religion we wanted to be. I decided I wanted to be Catholic when I was 14. I got baptized because I went to church with my dad as a kid. I remain Catholic to this day, practicing Catholic. And faith is the centerpiece of my religious beliefs. I believe it's a gift that we're used to, that we're given to sort of communicate with God, and it's something that, as anything else, ebbs and flows, and it sometimes is really strong and present. And sometimes you question things, but it's been important. And over the pandemic, the reason I did the album Alone with My Faith is because my tour got canceled, the whole world got canceled, everybody got sent home.
Mm-hmm.
I'm in lockdown, and after a couple of weeks, I started thinking, well, I'd like to just play some music. So I started recording some music, and I found that the process of recording the music made me feel good. So I started to write about my feelings. And because it was a shared experience with virtually everyone else in the world, I felt it was very easy to write about what the hell is happening right now, or
Yes.
my faith is going to get me through, or whatever it was on that spectrum. And before I knew it, I had, a whole album. So that's kind of, the album is basically a testament to how faith itself, helped get me through, whatever personal tragedies or inconveniences I experienced over the last year.
I want to dig into some of this, but as a Baptist preacher's kid who has no problem with Catholics, by the way, how does a good Catholic boy decide to record Because He Lives? Oh my gosh, it's an unbelievable anthem. How Great Thou Art, The Old Rugged Cross, and then Old Time Religion, which isn't a Baptist anthem at all. None of these are. But I mean, if you grow up in a very conservative Baptist world, which I did, we're talking about some of the most sung songs in that traditional evangelical Baptist world. How does a Catholic boy go, I'm going to record The Old Rugged Cross?
I grew up in a city where there was so much diversity in musical culture that what we were introduced to and what we heard was so vast.
Yes.
It all felt like ours. It's almost like food, like, a fried oyster po' boy or jambalaya, or like jambalaya is a Cajun thing, but we ate it in New Orleans, and that's like our food. And then you don't think about it. So, my dad was taking me to Black Baptist churches, white Baptist churches, synagogues, when he would meet with members of the community. And so I guess I just heard it.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I love it. I mean, my point is it was such an eclectic. I love the mix of it. I mean, I just think it's any person of faith is going to just be blessed by these songs, and because they are classics and the words are so great. That's what I'm curious about. I've heard you coach, young artists on American Idol. So I've seen how you kind of dive into this. So would you pick songs to go on an album, and then or whatever the artistic process is? And I love some of the backstory that I want you to share about what it was like just by yourself, and you turned into producer too. But when you dive into a song to put the Harry spin on it, your artistic spin on something, how much do those lyrics inspire what you do? And this is from a guy who has very little musicality. So I'm fascinated by that.
Important question. I mean, the lyrics, they're everything. Like they can make or break a song. Like sometimes you'll hear a song that's got such a beautiful melody. Like there's a song called The Days in Wine and Roses. I argue with my dad about this all the time. It was a lyric written by Johnny Mercer. It's a beautiful song. The lyrics are a little bit abstract, and it kind of takes me out of it when I sing it. He goes, well, I don't think so. And they're just a little strange, I guess. I'm oversimplifying it, but so a lyric could easily prevent me from wanting to sing song. But like a song like Old Rugged Cross, there's so much happening. I mean, within a few words, it goes from talking about the cross as an emblem of suffering and shame to, and I love that old cross. It's like, whoa, what? You think about that, suffering. That's a serious word to sing. Suffering and shame. Those are two very, very powerful words. And that cross, according to this song, is the emblem of suffering and shame. Oh, by the way, I love it. I love that old cross, where the dearest and best for a world of lost sinners was slain. I mean, when you drive in your car and you go over it and over it and over it, which is what I do before I sing it, it sets the stage for the arrangement itself. And the lyric to me was so powerful that I didn't want to come in singing right away. I just didn't want to go 1, 2, 3 on a hill far away. I didn't want to do that. I wanted to I had to set the stage for that. So I don't start singing until a minute or two into the song, because of the reverence I have for those lyrics. So yeah, the lyrics drive a lot.
Yeah. Another question. I've had the privilege to interview a lot of big business thinkers on this theme of innovation. And when I read the backstory of how you did this album in your home, you were doing everything. You know, you talked about, you got your iPad over here, and I'll start to get over my skis here, but I just read about it. You were doing everything, the instruments. Do you feel like at this point in your career, because you were alone, essentially doing this by yourself with all this world-class team you normally work with, that it made you more creative? Or how much more innovative were you because it was just you and you were limited?
I guess the analogy that comes about is if you have some great chef come over to your house and just say, make me something with whatever I have, he's going to make you something.
That's right.
With whatever you have. I mean, if it's stale bread, he might make you bread pudding or whatever. He'll figure something out that you never would have thought of. So it's not that he became more creative in that situation. It's that chef was allowed to show his creativity in a way that he doesn't normally do. And that's what happened here. So I wasn't more creative. I was just able to do things like, why would I play trumpet when I could call some of the greatest trumpet players in the world? Well, I couldn't. I had to literally play every instrument on the record, and not fake instruments.
Yes.
Really play the trumpet and really play the tuba and, you know, whatever instrument I was playing. And if I recorded and it didn't sound good, well, I'd record it again. And it might take me 3 hours to record something that, you know, was a very short amount of time, but it had to be just right. Could have taken a professional trumpet player 30 seconds, but that's why the album took so long, is because everything was so carefully made for that. So, you know, I got more trumpet playing practice, you know, so things like that were a great benefit. But in terms of being more creative, I don't think so. It was just a tangential opportunity to explore something that I loved.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, that's just a beautiful story of innovation there. I absolutely love it. I wouldn't ask you what a favorite track is. I made that mistake early on in interviewing. It's like each one of them is your kids.
No, I have a favorite.
Oh, you do? I've never heard somebody tell you. So is there a favorite track? That's what I want people to hear.
I have two. I have the one of them is Old Rugged Cross, and the other one is the title track, Alone with My Faith, because I purposefully wanted to hear people's reaction to this song. I don't read comments about myself or Google myself, but I did see some comments intentionally because I wanted to see what people thought about this song, Alone with My Faith, because the melody alone is very simple. The lyrics alone are very simple, but what's happening underneath all of that is much, much more complex. There are dissonant harmonies. There are things that are, you know, not easy to hear the first time around for somebody who doesn't really know a lot about music. And so there's a rub going on there, which is what the song is about. It's about, I'm alone with my faith and what is happening, and I got to work harder and all that. There's this dynamic working in real life that informed the music. And I saw it when I sang it on American Idol a couple of weeks ago. Yeah. And there's a look that that comes over people's faces sometimes when they aren't quite sure what they're listening to. Some people really, I felt, oh, that's really beautiful. Other people were like, that's weird sounding, strange sounding to me. And that's exactly what I wanted. I wanted to create a song that people could understand the lyrics to immediately, that they could sing along with, but that there was some stuff underneath there that was very troubling, just like the times we're in. So that's probably why it's my favorite.
I love it. Well, it's a beautiful album, folks. You got to get it. It's feel good music, but it'll do some good in you as well. 3 really quick questions, and because I want to honor your time, just some fun questions here, and then I want you to challenge our audience. I'll tee you up on that. Is there a favorite character of your movie career that you go, this is my favorite character that I've played?
Well, I had fun playing this role in a movie called Copycat, where I played a really very sick guy. That was a fun acting job. I did. I did a movie recently called Fear of Rain, where I played the father of a young girl with schizophrenia, which was a painful role to play, but very fulfilling role. And then I've done, romantic comedies like, Hope Floats, that are just fun to do.
Yeah.
That I those are fun, fun ways to
I
spend it.
love it. All right. A person from history, a musician that you've not had a chance to jam with, and you only get one person that's no longer with us that you haven't jammed with, who do you pick?
Louis Armstrong, hands down.
Yeah.
He was, to me, probably the greatest American musician for lots of reasons. It'd be a tie between him and Duke Ellington, but if to play with Louis Armstrong would be mind-boggling.
And then your go-to New Orleans food, what is it? Your favorite?
I like red beans and rice. I mean,
that's simple.
I like it simple. I could eat that every day.
That's awesome. All right, final word. I have tremendous admiration for what you've done with your life and how you've lived it. We got a lot of people listening here. Some of them are trying to figure out what they want to do with their life. They're working through it. Some of them know, but they're not quite sure how to get there. Some know what it is, how to get there, but they're just dealing with some fear, some doubt, maybe some relationship pressure. They're just not there yet, but they want to get there. What would you say to them?
Faith. Just keep working on your faith. Just keep answering that call, when it taps you on the shoulder, to try to be better, and to try to love more. And these are things I try to do. I would never, throw that out for anyone else. It's none of my business. And I don't know people's individual stories, but that's what I do. I close my eyes and I pray, and I ask to do God's will, and I try to get better at the things that I need to get better at, and just know that what happens, if I'm doing everything that I can, what happens is happening for a reason, and just to be able to gracefully accept that.
Yeah. The album is Alone with My Faith. Get it, run and get it wherever you like to buy music. It really is wonderful stuff. And I know that I've been encouraged. I know you folks have been as well. Harry, thank you for who you are, what you do, and how you do it. We're all better because of this conversation.
Thank you, Ken. It means a lot, man. It was great talking to you.